Well, was born and raised in Iran, so I'm 100% Persian, and I left Iran at the cusp of the 1979 revolution. And I honestly, my doctoral dissertation took me back to a time that I sort of left behind in 1979. And the reason I was studying Iranian history, but what struck me when I was studying Iranian history is how much I thought I knew about the history of Iran and what had transpired with the revolution, and I realized, in fact, how much I don't know. And one of the things that struck me the most was a counterintuitive reality, which is that women initially were one of the biggest supporters of Ayatollah Khomeini, and actually were a contributing factor to the collapse of the Pahlavi monarchy, which in essence, since the advent of Shiite Islam in Iran, was the only monarchy that emancipated the Iranian women and actually attempted to bring them out of seclusion after centuries of being confined to the household. So this fact in and of itself is what prompted me to do more research and figure out what had transpired for this to occur. So this was one of the areas that interested me. What I did discover along the way is despite the patriarchal barriers and the legalized and systematic discrimination of women in Iran, how women in post-revolutionary Iran continue to shine and continue to accomplish so much despite an ongoing repression. So, and what is remarkable about this period, and also again counterintuitive because you are talking about boundaries of a traditional patriarchal prescription, is that there has been an unprecedented surge in literacy among women in Iran. Women in Iran continue to outnumber men in higher education. And there has been a full-blown feminist movement for the first time in Iran. By feminist movement, I mean there was a women's rights movement during the Shah, but again, it was not a grassroots movement. It was a movement dictated from above, which was visionary and unprecedented and wonderful. But what's happened in post-revolutionary Iran and transpired again because of the oppressive atmosphere is that it's a grassroots movement that doesn't have a leader. Every kind of women are contributing to this: artists, filmmakers, journalists, secular women, religious women, women from different religious backgrounds. So this is a flourishing movement because it doesn't have a leader. Everyone is contributing to it. And what's amazing is despite all the barricades, these women continue with their activism. So Shirin Ebadi, who is one of the pioneers of the women's rights movement, Nobel laureate, has said that she doesn't believe this movement can ever be defeated because it does not have a leader. So it just keeps on perpetuating. The Jewels of Allah basically shatters a lot of the stereotypical assumptions about women in Iran, specifically women in post-revolutionary Iran, and brings to the forefront and highlights a lot of the powerful voices of women in Iran, past and present, and also exposes the many concealed components, which I discovered in my doctoral thesis, that have actually led to a full-blown feminist movement within a patriarchal society. I also want to pay, in a small way that I can, homage to the myriad of accomplished women in Iran today who continue to shine their bright light despite a legalized and systematic discriminatory system. You know, the Iranian woman today is, that is the misconception that I discuss, is that the Iranian woman today is not handicapped despite the discriminatory laws. The Iranian woman today is bolder and braver than they have ever historically been, that they want to be autonomous, they want to maintain autonomy over their lives, and they have been extremely adroit at maximizing and sort of working their way around all the doors that have been shut. So this is, for example, a way to maintain autonomy is by not getting married. So women in Iran are delaying marriage. Women in Iran are delaying childbearing. The divorce rate in the last year alone has climbed over 3.5%. In fact, the women in Iran are not having children, which has prompted Ayatollah Khamenei to recently consider a ban on vasectomies and also limit access to contraception with the hopes of putting an end to this cycle. But I firmly believe that that's also going to be ineffective because women in Iran are very resilient. They just, that's, an assumption people have that, it's a patriarchal system and women are behind the veil, and that is so not true. There's a hardliner camp which aims to redirect women into the private domain, the traditional mindset. And you have the progressive/reformist group, which believes in gender equality, which believes that men and women are equal, which subscribes to a new and evolved way of reinventing the system from within. So yes, there are two camps. Now the new generation of Iranians, Iran has a highly youthful population, and women specifically subscribe to the reformist progressive side of the coin, so to speak. So I firmly believe where Iran's current population is concerned does not identify with the hardline ideology. No. Women are not better off under Rouhani. Now, I know that President Rouhani is somewhat handicapped because the supreme leader literally reigns supreme. But the fact is that under President Rouhani, the last 1.5 years in office, there's been a large crackdown on female activists. Executions have increased. You have something that, even during Khomeini's time, when the revolution, the whole revolutionary Islamization of Iranian society had begun to take place, you never had such atrocities such as the acid attacks on women. You have so many female activists that are being jailed today. So whether President Rouhani's moderate stance is genuine, I don't know, and I can't say for a fact. But I do believe that women are definitely not better off. In fact, just recently, the lady who is the head of the Women's and Family Affairs in Iran came out and gave an interview and said that she is literally handicapped and blocked in her position as head of women of this department by just governmental constraints, that she has been put in this position, but she is literally blocked in any governmental capacity to do any good. So this is one of the things I wanted to bring to the forefront, that there's been literally not much movement where women's emancipation and reversal of any discriminatory laws are concerned under Rouhani. Mahnaz Mohammadi, for example, is a prominent women's rights activist. She was given a 5-year sentence recently for quote-unquote collaboration with the BBC. Now, first of all, I don't really know what that means in true essence. But these, for me, personally speaking, and from the research I've undertaken, these are all efforts by hardliners to silence the women's movement, meaning anything that deviates from their norm is put under the banner of collaborating with the West, or collusion and conspiracy with the West, or propagation against system endangering the national security. All these are very popular, quote-unquote, banners of excuses to place women's rights activists in jail. And in essence, when you do that, you silence them.
Yes, so do you think they are succeeding in a way?
No, because for every one woman activist who's jailed, there's 10 more who continue to forge ahead. For example, former President Rafsanjani's daughter, Faizeh Hashemi, is one of the main women's rights activists, and she has relentlessly criticized the regime for their discriminatory practices, and she recently served 6 months in jail for that. So you have to think the daughter of a former president goes to jail, and she was recently released, and when she was released, and what I mean to say, this is not a deterrent, she said that she will not be deterred from the task at hand, that she will continue to do what she can. So these women are not, jailing these women is not a deterrent. So when you talk about trying to silence these women, it's sad. Well, I was specifically talking about the differing ideologies that both these leaders have, specifically with regards to women in Iran, meaning they seem to be, in my opinion, playing good cop, bad cop. But whether that's a fact or not, I cannot definitively say. What needs to be done is more of a concerted effort to come up with a middle of the road, or something they can agree upon, or better yet, have a separation of church and state. The baby order is to, for women to keep procreating, and as I said, that Iran has, according to the United Nations, Iran has experienced one of the most dramatic fertility declines. So I don't think Ayatollah Khamenei decreeing such a thing is going to get women to get the ball rolling, so to speak. I think, in fact, the more Ayatollah Khamenei keeps up trying to push women back into the traditional, or redirect them back into the traditional domain, the more adverse effects it's going to have. Women in Iran have shown that they are not going to bend to these prehistoric gender ideology. I think it brings, specifically, it brings to the forefront the reprehensible acts of violence against women by the regime. You have to consider that this young girl was 19 years old when she was convicted of this crime. She was held in solitary confinement for 2 months. She had no access to legal counsel, and she was not allowed to see her family. Now, I'm not well versed in Islamic legal jargon to be able to get into the specifics. My whole premise was that you were talking about a 19-year-old girl who was born and raised in a society that from the minute she's born, she is devalued specifically based on her gender. And you take that and you execute her for killing her assailant, I understand, but what the specifics around that circumstances are, again, I cannot definitively collaborate on that. But what I'm saying is, as a mother, I think that this was, and I said it, I think the Islamic Republic has taken the lead in the Hall of Shame. I think it is shameful what they did to this young woman, and I agree with Amnesty International, it is a bloody stain. Well, she makes a great point, because as mothers, women wield the power to change that perception. So I think women as mothers, particularly in patriarchal cultures, should not underestimate the power that they have to ideologically raise boys as young children not to subscribe to this mentality. So they do wield that power, and they should make a concerted effort when they're rearing their children to make a concerted effort to, not to change that path, so to speak, to reorient this trend. Particularly, every man should realize that in denigrating women, he's denigrating the very person who gave birth to him. So for every man who subscribes to this ideology that women don't have the same rights, that women are not equal to men, they are in fact denigrating the very person that brought them to life. First of all, there's so many women who have been inspiring, and so many of them make up this beautiful canvas. But specifically, Shirin Ebadi to me is highly inspirational. She was the first Muslim Nobel laureate in Iran. She got the Nobel Peace Prize in 2003 for her human rights activism. What's amazing for me about Shirin Ebadi's story is that she was one of the first women to become a judge in Iran, because women before the Shah were not allowed to serve as judges, and they are today also no longer allowed to serve as judges. And she wrote about, in her memoir, Iran Awakening, initially supporting the Islamic regime against the Pahlavi monarchy. Now here's a woman who, of course, her own accomplishments speak volume for herself, but she did manage to gain a lot because of the emancipatory measures undertaken by the Pahlavi regime. And what's amazing about her story is that she writes that it took me literally 10 seconds after Khomeini came to power to realize that I had enthusiastically participated in my own demise. And yeah, so, for me, when you come out and you say publicly make such a statement, I think it sets such an important precedence, and it sends, the ripple effects of these words are powerful, specifically because you're owning up to the Islamic regime's erroneous platform, an ambiguous platform that drew in the masses, that capitalized on potentially certain trends that were going on during the Pahlavis, namely a motion towards a Western way of life that maybe some traditional masses were not inclined to go towards, and Khomeini really capitalized on that. And his rhetoric, and I talk about that in my book, was very vague and ambiguous at best in the beginning, his sermons. But Shirin Ebadi is a phenomenal role model for not only Iranian women, but all women.